start from a very basic visualization to see how SEO has changed today. You can look it up right now. If you go on Google US, you can search up for search engine optimization, which is SEO. And you can look up at the way it looks like today. You can see that pretty much all the space of what we can call Google above the fold, which is the first part of Google search results page, is taken up by advanced features, what Google might internally call one boxes. I don't know if Bill agrees with that, but this is the aim of those features is really to give direct answers to users. We've seen it already in different talks today, and pretty much this is just a confirmation of what is going on. You don't need to look at too much data. You just can go on Google search results and you can look at this. Now, as you can see, this is very interesting because you can see that there is as a first result, there is a paid campaign. On the right side, there is a knowledge panel, which I called probably wrongly knowledge graph, but part of that information is pulled up by Google Knowledge Graph. Then there is a feature snippet. People also ask box, and then just below there, you're going to find the organic result. So if you've been targeting the organic results, then you're not getting the results that you used to get before. Now, I introduced myself. My name is Gennaro. I used to be a financial analyst in San Diego, California. I resigned in 2015. I got back to Italy. I started my own digital business. I started to launch digital products, and then in 2017, I joined Warlift, which is a startup in Rome, Italy, and we deal with structured data, knowledge graph, and that's all we do. And we try to automate search engine optimization as much as we can. Now, I'm showing you throughout the presentation some of the results also from my blog, which is called 4-Week MBA. The reason why I do that is because on this blog, I don't have any sort of non-disclosure agreement, so I can tell you everything that I'm doing. There is no hiding. And this is, for example, some of the results that I got. Like 1 year ago, I took back this blog. I was doing probably 10 visits per day. Today, this blog does 2,000 or most clicks per day. So I've been implementing all the strategies and all the things that I've been learning with the team at Warlift. And so those are the kind of things that have been working also on my blog. Let's see right now, we already seen this today, but just very quickly, the way Google is sending traffic has changed pretty suddenly, especially in the last couple of years. So starting 2016, the way Google is sending traffic to website has changed a lot. And we can look at it right now. It is changed on desktop and on mobile. On desktop, you can see that over almost like a third of queries on Google search results pages are not translated in links to our website, so they're just becoming no-click searches. This is very important because it means that now Google is becoming more and more a closed platform, a locked-in platform, where people and users get inside Google on the Google search results pages, and they're not able to get out. And there is a reason because Google is doing it from the business standpoint. We're going to see why. And you need to understand why, because Google business model is not changing, but there are certain things that we need to pay attention to. And if you understand this, you understand how Google thinks, and then your strategy. So why is this happening? Well, because if I go, for instance, on this kind of query, there is no space for me to click because I get most of the answers. And so that's why Google is creating this lock-in experience for me. On mobile, this is even more staggering. So according to this is the data from Rem Fiskin and Spark Toro together with Jumpshot, we can see that 2/3 almost of queries on mobile are not becoming traffic. So over 61%, or we have over 61% of no-click searches on mobile. And this is data from 2018, so it means that probably in 2019 this is even worse. What is happening here? So there is a radical change. We're moving from search engine optimization to answer engine optimization. Jason is an expert on this. He has a podcast. He has done the webinar series. So if you haven't watched it, there is a webinar series with Semrush and the podcast, which is very cool, and I always listen to it while I'm on the road. This is a business transition. So Google is becoming a closed platform, a locked-in platform, which means that Google has to capture value. How does Google capture value from the business standpoint? It has to make money out of users because it sells advertising on its pages. And Google in 2018 has made $160 billion of advertising revenues. So $116 billion of advertising revenues. So it's very big number. And if you understand this kind of how the business model of Google works, then you can understand why this is happening. And most of all, Google advanced features are stealing most of the traffic from the organic result. This is an interesting data coming from a research done by Ahrefs probably a couple of years ago, and pretty much it shows you that if you get a feature snippet, even though if you're not in the first ranking position, you're stealing traffic from the first ranking position. So if you get inside the snippet, you're stealing traffic, so it's sort of a SEO hack. Another interesting point is that, still highlighted by Ahrefs, is that most of the feature snippets, so 59.2% of feature snippets, are triggered by rankings and pages which are in position 2 to 5. So you don't need to be first to get a feature snippet. This is very important. So a few years back, you needed to be on the first ranking position. That was all that mattered. It's not anymore. It has changed, and you can see it from here. And it is very important also for your brand. This is the way I played around with the feature snippet and knowledge panel to get myself featured inside those Google features, which allowed me to gain visibility on my personal brand. Why is this happening at all? Well, first of all, we have to understand that Google, the value proposition of Google is to actually provide value for users, is not to provide necessarily value for publishers. So when publishers panic for what is happening, well, they're right to do it because Google is looking at what users want, not what publishers want. And in reality, what is happening here is that Google, what we can call a big G, is getting ready for the voice search war. And this is really a war. It's a war because, you know, first of all, it seems like people are liking to consume content on voice devices. We don't know how big is going to be this market, but in US, the user base has grown substantially, like 558% in 2018 alone. And then if we look at the data, at least for search devices, you can see that there is this battle between Amazon Alexa and Google, Google Home. And so far in US, Amazon is actually winning the battle. And so Google has to invest even more widely to actually get back on track. So even though Google has been the winner of the previous era of the web, is not sure that it's going to be the winner of the next era of the web, which is probably more oriented toward consumption on voice devices and activation toward voice. When did all this start? This started, we saw already, you know, throughout the day on the other presentation that there was probably years when Google started to look into structured data and knowledge graph, as Bill has highlighted also today. It was probably 2010 when Google bought MetaWeb, which bought also Freebase. And that was the starting point. Probably 2010 is the year when Google started to invest massively in this area, even though we're seeing the results today, probably starting from 2016. There are two major changes. The first one is schema.org in 2011, which was rolled out by the main commercial search engines, like Google, Yandex, Yahoo, Bing, and so on and so forth. And then in 2012, there was the knowledge graph. So Google started to build its own knowledge graph, which was meant to actually produce content and knowledge out of this knowledge graph. But what's really a knowledge graph? At basic level, it's just a massive database which is made of triples. A triple is just a simple statement. Like I can say, I know Jason, Jason knows Bill, and those are two triples. And by combining those two triples, that's how you start building up a knowledge graph, because a knowledge graph is made of linked data. And the more you have those triples that come together, the more you build up a knowledge graph. So this is more similar to the way probably we human at least articulate written language in some way. And that's how the knowledge graph can be built up. So this is very basic explanation. But why is the knowledge graph important? Right now, for instance, with the team at WordLift, we used to say that the knowledge graph is very important for SEO, so you get traffic from Google. But in reality, the knowledge graph is very important for many other reasons. The first one is, Bill has highlighted today, when you build up a knowledge graph, you also allow the search engine to reference the data that you're giving it. So it makes it easier for Google to see if you're giving to the search engine the quality data, let's call it in this way. Because if you're doing it, then it means that Google can trust you. And if Google can trust you, it means that can also rank you higher. So in that sense, the knowledge graph is going to speed up authority. So for instance, we have the Next Web, which is using WordLift on its website, and they have their own entities which are built up as an internal knowledge graph. Then the knowledge graph can be also used to enhance the internal search within a website. It can be used to unlock insights within a website because you can understand what kind of content you're writing and what you should be writing next. Another important thing is that the knowledge graph is very important to contextualize information. One example is Airbnb, which is using internally a knowledge graph to actually allow users to interact with a massive amount of content by giving answers really quickly on travel-related queries. And you can use it in many other ways. For instance, on a travel platform, we've been implementing a knowledge graph which allow them to create several touch points with their users, which makes them make more money because you can convert those users in paying customers very quickly. So we try to create, as we create a user navigation with the menu of a website, we try to do the same with the structured data. So we create a sort of a path for the users that can navigate through. And through this, this sort of navigation that we create with the structured data, we can make them take certain actions. So this is very important. So how do you build your knowledge graph? So the first step is schema.org. You need to get familiar with schema. Build this today, but also Cindy this morning gave us a lot of information. And really schema, it's a shared, it's a vocabulary which allows you to explain to the search engine what your website is about. So this is about meaning. It allows you to tell Google, hey, this is what I'm talking about. This is the way you should be reading my content, and that's why we want to use schema. We actually, with the team at Vurank, which is a Belgian company, we looked at almost 20 million websites, and we noticed that a very small percentage is using metadata, which means that still today, even though structured data I think should be a best practice, still today very few websites are using it, and I think more people can take advantage of this strategy. And it's very good for you if you start doing it today because it means that you're going to get more results now. There are several tools to implement the schema markup. There is the markup helper, the schema app, and then there's like WordLift. On our end, we try to automate the process. So we try to make it everything very smooth, even for people that don't know how to code. So we make it possible for everyone to add the structured data on web pages. And we leverage on open link data. It means that we connect everything up that you have within the structured data so that Google can understand the context of your web pages. Now, why is a knowledge graph very important? There is a simple reason, and I like to use an analogy here. A knowledge graph is a sort of a modern sitemap, where to the sitemap you submit it to Google to tell it what pages are more important within your site. With the knowledge graph, you actually tell Google what meaning is more important within your site. So that's the main, I think, main difference is, this is my opinion on that. I let Bill probably tell me if that may make sense. And we also saw that the structured data is very useful because you can speed up the indexing process. Cindy Krum, which is not here anymore, this morning she presented, but she actually shared a very interesting thing a few weeks back, which is when you have a structured data on some pages, you can use either the Google or Bing API to have your content structure, have your content indexed way faster, which allows you to get those kind of results. Those are some metrics from Bing by doing it on a client website. This is, if I had to find an image of how the semantic web might look like, this one probably is the one that I like the most, because you can see your knowledge repository which is connected to others, and it forms this massive graph, which we can call sort of semantic web. And let's look at a very simple case study. This is a case study from my blog. For instance, on this query, which is asking how does DuckDuckGo, which is a search engine that looks at, after the privacy of users, How is DuckDuckGo making money? It triggers a feature snippet. And the interesting part is that that feature snippet, then it becomes an answer within the voice assistant of Google. So if you go on the Google Home and you ask the same query, Google is going to answer with the same content that you get on the feature snippet, which is very interesting. So this means that in many cases, we don't know exactly what's the percentage, but in many cases, like a feature snippet can become an answer within the voice assistant, which means that this is the fastest way for you to get inside Google Voice. Those are some other case studies, and the interesting thing, just going back to some of those cases, is that everything that we do, it's done by using structured data. So, for instance, on this page here, on this case, the page has been structured as an entity, and this entity, like also on this case here, this page is an entity. So pretty much DuckDuckGo is set up as an organization. In Schema, there is an entity type which is called organization. And then within this entity, you can specify all the other data which is relevant for Google to understand the page. That's how you make it easier for you also to trigger those kind of results. And the same is also for this one. In the back end, we added the structured data. We did it very quickly with the tool, but I mean, anyone can do it. And also on this query, it's the same. So we use the structured data as foundation for the page to rank, and that's how we feed it to Google, and that's how we try to trigger as much as possible advanced Google features. And the way we do it, for instance, with WordLift is just on the right side. We allow you to specify what entities you have in the content, and you can tag them up. And if you want to see how it works, I'm going to be available after, but I don't want to waste time on the technicalities. But we really use structured data plus open link data. And I mean, pretty much that's the point of today. And the most important aspect is that when you have structured data, you have a knowledge graph within your site. That's the step toward voice search. Because the next step is claiming your Google action within the assistant, which is going to allow you actually to trigger also answers with the content that you have been structuring as a structured data. So with this kind of content, that's how you get inside the assistant. That's how you get people knowing your brand. So, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.